Welcome to the dark. I'm the sightless storyteller. In a world obsessed with what we see, I invite you to focus on what we feel. Tonight, I have a chilling account for you, one that will change the way you listen to the silence of your own home. Lock your doors, turn down the light, and listen closely. Because when you can't see the danger, it's already too late.
I used to find the woods peaceful. I grew up in a house where the backyard simply ended and the Appalachian forest began. To me, the trees weren't a place to get lost, they were a sanctuary. I knew the difference between the snap of a dry twig under a squirrel's weight and the heavy rhythmic thud of a buck moving through the brush. I knew the smell of damp pine and the way the light filtered through the canopy at dusk. I thought I knew everything there was to know about the things that lived in the dark. I was wrong. There are things out there that don't belong to the forest. They just wear it like a costume it doesn't quite fit. It was November, during the height of the hunting season, but I wasn't out there with a rifle. I was just hiking back to my cabin after a long day of clearing brush near the ridge. The sun had dipped below the horizon 10 minutes earlier, leaving the woods in that strange blue-gray twilight where shadows start to stretch and merge. The temperature was dropping fast, and my breath was beginning to plume in the air like ghost smoke. I was about a mile from my porch when the forest went silent. And I don't mean quiet. I mean the kind of silence that feels like a physical weight. The crickets stopped. The owls, which usually start their territorial hooting at that hour, were dead quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. It was that void silence that usually means a predator is nearby, a mountain lion or a bear. I reached for the bear spray on my hip and slowed my pace. I scanned the tree line, my eyes darting between the thick trunks of the oaks. That's when I saw the deer. It was standing about 30 yards away, partially obscured by a thicket of laurel. It was a buck, a massive one. Its antlers were huge, sprawling upward like a crown of jagged bone. At first, I felt that familiar rush of seeing a beautiful animal in the wild. But as I watched it, that feeling curdled into a cold, sharp spike of dread in my stomach. Something was wrong with the way it was standing. A deer is a masterpiece of tension and grace. They are always ready to bolt. But this thing, it was lopsided. Its front legs were too long, reaching down into the dirt at an angle that looked like its shoulders had been dislocated and reset poorly. Its neck didn't have that graceful curve. It was straight and stiff, like a wooden post. I stood frozen, hoping it hadn't scented me. I watched it for a full minute. It didn't graze, it didn't twitch its ears to catch the sound of my breathing. It just stood there, staring at a patch of empty air. Then it turned its head toward me. It didn't turn like a deer turns, quick and alert. It was a slow, agonizingly smooth rotation, as if its neck was a ball joint. And when the face came into the light, I nearly lost my footing. The eyes weren't on the sides of its head, not really. They had migrated forward toward the snout, and they weren't the liquid brown eyes of an herbivore. They were white, pure milky white with tiny pinprick pupils that locked onto mine with a terrifying human-like focus. Its snout was too short, the jaw slightly undershot, revealing a row of teeth that were flat and square like a person's. I didn't move. I knew that if I ran, it would trigger a chase instinct. I tried to speak, to make a human sound to scare it off, but my throat felt like it had been cinched shut with wire. "Hey," I managed to whisper. It was barely a sound. The thing reacted instantly, but it didn't run away. It took a step toward me. As it moved out of the thicket, I saw its body clearly. It was gaunt. Its skin was stretched so tight over its ribs that I could see the individual bones shifting under the fur. It looked like it was starving, but not from a lack of food. It looked like it was consuming itself from the inside out. And then it did the one thing I will never be able to unsee. It reared up. A deer can stand on its hind legs for a second or two to reach a high branch or to fight another deer, but this thing didn't rear, it unfolded. It stood up until it was nearly 7 feet tall, its front hooves dangling limply at its chest like useless, withered hands. It balanced there with a terrifying, unnatural stability. It began to walk toward me on 2 legs. It wasn't a graceful walk. It was a series of jerky, stabbing motions. Thud, crack, thud, crack. Its knees were bending the wrong way, snapping forward with every step. The sound of its joints popping echoed through the silent woods like pistol shots. I backed away, my hands shaking so hard I dropped my bear spray into the leaves. I didn't stop to pick it up. I turned and scrambled up the slope, my boots slipping on the slick needles. I could hear it behind me. It wasn't galloping, it was shuffling. Scritch, thud, scratch, thud. I reached the clearing where my cabin stood. I burst through the door and through the heavy iron bolt, collapsing against the wood. I stayed there for hours, listening. I heard it come onto the porch. I heard the sound of a heavy body leaning against the house. And then I heard the scratching. It wasn't the scratching of a hoof or a claw. It sounded like a fingernail tapping rhythmically against the glass of the window. Tap, tap, tap. And then a voice. It wasn't a voice I recognized, but it was imitating one. It sounded like my neighbor, Miller, who lived 2 miles down the road. It was his exact pitch, his exact draw, but it was wrong, like a recording being played at the wrong speed. "You left your keys in the woods," the voice said. I looked at my belt. My keys were right bare, clipped to my loop. "You left your keys in the woods," it repeated, over and over. Each time the voice got a little more distorted, a little more metallic, until it didn't sound like Miller anymore. It sounded like a machine trying to scream. I didn't look out the window. I sat in the middle of my floor with my back to the wall, holding a kitchen knife I knew wouldn't do anything against something like that. I sat there until the sun came up. When it was light enough to see, I went outside. My porch was covered in tracks, but they weren't deer tracks. They were prints of a human foot, long, narrow, and barefoot, but with a deep cloven split down the center of each heel. I don't go into the woods anymore. I sold the cabin and moved to the city. I tell people I got tired of the isolation. I tell them I wanted to be closer to work. But at night, when the wind whistles through the alleyways, I find myself looking at my door. I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of the things that hide in the light, wearing the faces of things we think we understand. Because if you see a deer in the woods, and it looks just a little bit off, if its eyes are just a little too forward, don't wait for it to stand up. Just run.
The night journey has ended, but the shadow remains. If the story made you look twice into the darkness of your own room, hit the like button and subscribe to join the circle of our listeners. I'm the Sightless Storyteller. Until next time, keep your ears open and stay in the light.